theology, and philosophy here. And we are and introduce a playlist called Law and Grace. Now, why have we introduced this playlist? Is because this is a very important subject to deal with humanity, especially in the religious and psychological sphere. Um, Religion is a very interesting thing because, um, of course, people don't like using the word religion. You know, most people I've met, evangelicals, they'll tell you, "No, I'm not religious. I have faith," and I'm like, "Okay, but that means you're religious because religion, a person of faith is a person who has belief in something that if he does this, this is going to happen." So there are very many. There's diversity of faith. Remember, diversity is the diversity was monolithic, then there would be only one book in religion because every story of everybody would be the same. You see? That's why there's diversity. The story of Abraham is not the story of Joseph. The story of Joseph is not the story of Muhammad. The story of Muhammad is not the story of Buddha. The story of Joseph Smith is not the story of Amy McPherson. We all have different stories, and that's what's called diversity. And therefore, we have diverse experiences. This is why religion is a very subjective lifestyle. It's not objective, but there's something that's objective and is still part of religion, and that is law. And that's what we're going to be looking at. And now we're going to look at the book of John, chapter 1. In the book of John, chapter 1, and we're going to. But grace and truth came by Jesus Christ. Now, the law was given by Moses. Now, we have to understand what is law? Law is a system of order. It's a system of order. And Moses was given a law. But you've got to understand something about law. Law is not is a political system. It's a political system. What is political system? It is the governance of human beings by the use of law and authority. So Moses set up a system that put our way of life. And you see, every culture in the world has its law. Every culture in the world. But at the same time, that is not right because there are some cultures which have no law. They are liberal. They are accultural. They can be living in a community, but everybody does what they want to do. You know, some people can go out and some will want to farm and some will want to sleep during the day. Others will want to go. Yeah, so that it's the diversity. And you may think it's anarchy, but it's really not. It's just that everyone has his own law. Happened in Israel, even after Moses made the law and disappeared, because of Moses' death, they could not keep the culture that Moses had instilled in them. The law could not go on as strong as it was. This is why in the book of Judges, most of them did not keep the law. Israel was free, they had idols. There's a priest whom God used, and he had an idol in the book of Judges, Micah. So, isn't that a contradiction of the law of Moses? But there was nobody to oversee the law being enforced. Now, John is telling us Moses gave law, but Jesus came with grace and truth. Why? Because Jesus, remember, said in the same book of John, it is said, he said, the truth, you shall know the truth, and the truth will make you free. What is the truth? Remember what I told you the truth is in my other posts. The truth is knowledge, is science. It will make you free. It makes you free. Laws do not make you free. They bind you. They bind you. You are bound by a law. If there is a law saying you shall not eat pork, you're bound. When you see pork, you can't eat it. That's binding. But when you live in a graceful and liberal place, you're told, eat what you want to eat. This is the reason why Jesus was not really accepted by his own people. Remember, he said, the enemies of your own house, the enemies of a man are in his household. And Jesus was killed in his household. But it is not that Jesus wanted to die, actually. So forget, and not only that, he was not only killed by his own household, he was also killed by the Romans. It's the Romans who did it, because Pilate had time to say, no, do not kill this man. There is no evidence. There is no evidence to kill him. But Pilate refused. So even Pilate, even Romans, the Gentiles also have killed Jesus. You know, we have to deal with these very dirty conspiracy theories that killed many Jews, because there was a belief that Jews were the killers of Christ. And it's the reason why there's anti-Semitism in the world. It's because of that belief that Jesus was killed by the Jews, when that's not true. Not Jesus was actually more killed by the Gentile, because the Pilate had power to tell, he had power to tell the to set Jesus free, because he was to judge between Barnabas or Jesus. And when the people shouted Jesus, he said, okay, let it be him. But let me wash my hands so that it's not my fault. That's the mistake Pilate made. He shouldn't have washed his hands. He had the authority. He had the whole Roman contingent that could silence the whole of Jerusalem. So that's the thing you need to know. Please don't fall into the trap of hating Jews and calling them Christ killers. They did not kill Christ. Jesus was wrongly, legally speaking, he was wrongly put to death. But spiritually speaking, he knew that that was going to happen. He knew he was going to die, and he accepted it. So he understood what was going to happen. So the issue is not, I don't know why I don't know why some Christians thought they had to fight for Jesus when he said he wants to die. I mean, why fight for him and he wanted to die? Anyway, so now we're just doing an introduction. Why are we doing this introduction? It's because there is a system we have in religion. Many religions have, they are either that is, they follow a law, or they are liberal, that is, they follow grace, they just let things flow as it is, or they are a mix of law and grace. That is, they're legalistic, but they can have some liberalism in certain areas. Now we're going to be looking, why we're going to look at this is because it is a very important subject. There are some people, when you are in the Old Testament, have you noticed something? When you read the Bible, the Christian Bible has two testaments. Two. The Jewish Bible, scriptures, has no testament. There's you don't find it's just called the Tanakh. That's all. It is not testamentary. There is nothing like they're not waiting for a New Testament. Jews are not waiting. They know that the Messiah is to come and rule for them. So there is nothing like they need to even get saved. That's why most Jews wonder, why are you preaching to me? I mean, I'm waiting for Messiah. And besides, some of them even are atheists because they have waited for thousands of years. They even died in the millions, and then you come and tell them that there's a Messiah. They even feel abused. So now, the Jews who follow the law, which are very few, they tend to follow, stick to the Old Testament and they follow it very religiously. And this is the problem. Why homophobia exists, misogyny exists. It's because they are using the scriptures, the law, they are Mosaic. They stick to Moses. And then the New Testament believers are the ones who believe in Jesus Christ, and they know that Jesus Christ is liberal to all. He accepts everybody. He accepts Gentiles. He accepts Jews. And this is the same. Paul even did that. Paul went on to preach that message. Of course, Jesus even was a bit particular. The time when he had to heal, when he came to heal Gentiles, he really took them through a test. He just didn't heal everybody because he said his job was to come for the lost sheep of Israel. He was not looking for Gentiles. But Paul was different. Paul and Peter were told that it's now time to go to the Gentiles. And Jesus also gave the job to go to the Gentiles to his disciples. But they still couldn't think of it because the disciples were waiting for a kingdom. They were not waiting for time to preach. They just knew, okay, Jesus, you've risen from the dead. Now it's time for you to rule with power. Because that is if you want to understand the yearning of the Jewish people, it is to rule, is to restore the Davidic kingdom that was great in power and might. And that is what they thought Jesus was going to do, but he didn't do that. He said, no, you go and preach to the Gentiles, go and preach to the whole world. And Paul emphasized that. And so what happened is Paul made a very open religion, made Christianity to be very open, and which was so different from the Jewish Judaism that many Jews, as when Paul died, the number of Jews in Christianity reduced. And as the years progressed on, fewer Jews left Christianity, especially after the destruction of Jerusalem, which was just like the destruction of Israel. And in AD 70, that's when the Jews ran and scattered. All the Jews that used to be in Israel, most of them scattered to Europe that time. And it was very quiet, very empty. Next thing you know, a few are coming back, a few are coming back. That's why you're finding problems happening right now in Israel. It's a long history. It's a millennial problem. It's a millennia problem because Israelis are people who they have always been captured, going out. Captured. Why now they're having problems? You know, it's like you have a house and then you keep on going somewhere and you stay there for now because you have generations, you can stay away from your house for 1,000 years. Then you come back to your house and you find living there. And you tell them, excuse me, this is our land. And they say, hey, no way, this is our house. We've been here for 800 years. Where were you? You see, that's what's happening in Israel right now. Because they were diaspora, they were dispersed, they were scattered from their homeland. And so it's only going to be solved if they are able to live together in harmony. I am for the solution that if they can't make a two-state solution, just make it one state. Call it Israel, And let Muslims live there, let Christians live there, let Jews live there. That's what I think. We won't talk about that now. We are talking about the law and grace. We're just introducing. So what I'm trying to say is grace is liberal. You don't, even Paul was a very graceful man. He took a lot from, like Jesus, you could say, because Paul, even though he was a Jew, he didn't force Gentiles to be Jewish. You see, because that was the problem that was happening in the Christian church. It meant you were part of the Abrahamic covenant of being blessed and being the children of God. So it was so hard for them to understand that Gentiles are part of God's plan. They are part of the covenant. This is why Paul took time to do that. And when we're going to be doing this series, slowly by slowly, we will be going through the teachings Paul undertook about law, because Paul talked about the law, especially in Romans. He talked about the law. Now, as I conclude, you've seen grace is liberal, law is rigid, because the law is if you do this, don't do this. That's what the law is. Now, what people need to understand, the law of Israel was like the current laws we are making today as countries. So most countries have their own type of Torah. Secondly, the laws of Israel, like the African cultures and maybe a bit of Asian cultures, these cultures had what you call oral law, taboos. They didn't write their laws, they just spoke. And because speech to them was how they stored information. They don't store information like the Westerners and the Easterners, some of the Easterners like Jews and Arabs who like writing, and Babylonians. They like they like talking. Oral law taboos were laws spoken. And so when it came to like when somebody there's one taboo like when you die, you're not allowed to sweep the house because you'll be sweeping away the spirit of the person. So that was a taboo. It was a law. And you could write it down, but this in most African communities for some strange reason they never wanted to write. I think because in Africa, when we'll discuss, because this is also a spiritual channel and philosophical, you will study Africans like doing things without writing. They just, they like observing. Knowledge by observation. There is knowledge by observation, by reading, and there is knowledge by listening. There is diversity of knowledge, of acquiring. Some people are good at acquiring knowledge by reading a book. Some of us are good at acquiring knowledge by observing, just seeing something. You just see, look at a tree, how it grows, and you'll understand what a tree is. Some are good at learning by ear. That's why even musicians, they are what you call musicians who play by ear. They don't need to read music. They just, they enter, and it's very spiritual. Just as reading is spiritual, because Jesus said that you shall know the truth. How do we know? What do we know? We listening. We know by seeing, and we also know by feeling, and we also know by experiencing. See, because experiencing, that's when you know something. You cannot know England if you've not gone. You can also know England without going there by seeing pictures of England on YouTube. You cannot know Brazil. Some people will say you can only know Brazil when you're there, and they could be right, but to some extent. You can know Brazil by going to YouTube and just saying Brazil. And you look at Brazil and you see the trees. You say, oh, that looks like, I remember. And then when you go to Brazil, you say, oh, I remember Brazil. It looked like this. Yes, I saw this thing when I was watching on YouTube. That's how you know. So there are many ways of knowing. You can experience it. When you visit a place, you have the whole being is knowing that place. The whole being. But when you observe, it is only your sight and your experience of being in other places that is getting. So it's better you travel. A visitor to a place is a stronger expert of a place than somebody from a distance. So that's what we're going to be discussing here: law and grace, especially, or law and liberty, because we are having a lot of issues with legislations and people who are insisting on imposing legislations that are so old. You know, every time you hear somebody imposing a homophobic legislation, just know he's still stuck in 2000 BC. Yes, he is. He's stuck. He doesn't know it. He's stuck in 2000 BC because science is there to disprove him. Yes. So we'll be discussing the law and grace and the views of Paul. Yes, and be you're very much welcome to join us.